I'm experiencing that it is not about human and AI, but more and more human or AI, or human versus AI, or humanized AI, or even artificial humans. And that is really scary. And from my perspective, this is misleading.
Welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast, Human and AI, Mind, Machines, and a Gradient Descent.
Thanks that you tuned in again to listen and to learn. We are Uli and Avery, and we're super stoked to welcome our today's genius mind, Markus Zechel. Markus is the Program and Innovation Manager at Siemens Supply Chain Management, and he's super passionate about pushing innovation or AI-fueled companions or sustainability initiatives. Okay, that sounds like an inspiring plan, isn't it? So, Markus, it's really great to connect to you today. So, how are you and where do we catch you?
Yeah, hi, Avery and Uli. Thanks for inviting me. Well, I'm actually fine. And of course, in these strange times at my home office desk.
Enjoying home office, nice. Markus, I guess, it's already, oh my gosh, we're getting old, right? A couple of years ago, almost, right? It feels like that we met in the lab and we were actually giggling about, right, that you're the owner of a senator card, actually, a senator status for the Air Lab, because you were actually one of the first, right, making use of a bit of the platform and bringing, for your case, a bit of, the aspects of AI and design thinking and supply chain somehow together, right? But maybe, if you reflect a bit on the folks out there, right, can you a bit of, depict and share us a bit of your history, on your personal flavor? What's the past behind you and how do you end up actually to Siemens?
Okay. I would say, after studying industrial engineering with a strong focus on real estate, I wrote my thesis for a global company, consulting company actually. And I also started to work for it. And this was around the millennium, so at the beginning of the new century. And you might remember there was this little E in front of everything, e-business, e-commerce, e-marketplaces, e-everything. Yeah? And well, I wrote my thesis actually around e-procurement. And actually that's obviously still the domain that I'm working in. And at that time, we had a similar hype like we have currently with digitalization. But back then, it followed exactly the Gartner hype cycle. Well, the elder ones of us remember the dot-com bubble and the decline of many startups, especially in Silicon Valley. I guess you all remember, at least Uli, I guess. Yeah. And
somehow, yeah. My thesis was also e-paper. How cool is that?
Oh,
My bachelor thesis. I did have a startup, right? At this
how cool is that? We should compare it.
Phase, right?
Yeah, and then I guess currently we are obviously back on track in the Gartner hype cycle curve and coming back to a more sustainable plateau, especially when it comes to digital transformation. And yeah, I mean, well, with the decline of the dot-com economy, I should be transformed somehow to an SAP consultant at that time, which I didn't like, as I always preferred to create my own solutions over applying and rolling out pre-given tools in a rather, I would say, inflexible environment. So that was the time when some colleagues also from this consulting company joined Siemens Supply Chain Consulting, and I also took the chance to join this great company here. And that was around 2003 or 2004, around that time. Yeah, there we had projects, actually internal projects. The first one was at Siemens Business Services. And already there, I was involved in several IT projects, and I was asked after the first consulting project to join SBS actually. And there I started also what we call maturity level assessments, so global assessments where we evaluated certain organizations, mainly procurement organizations, and that's what I have done within SBS later on, then also for Siemens Communications and then also for Nokia Siemens Networks. So I said it was always a mixture between this assessment topics and also digital projects or projects around IT. And I was already at that stage quite much involved in digitalization and discovery topics, I would say. In 2012, I went back to headquarters, to Siemens headquarters, came back from Nokia Siemens Networks, and I was asked to set up a new program which was called World Class Supply Chain Assessment, and also applying world class purchasing assessments. And with all of these programs, I discovered quite a lot of corners within the Siemens universe. So I traveled quite a lot, and it was really fun to meet a lot of guys around the globe, especially, of course, in procurement and supply chain management, but also cross-functional partners. And around 2017, then I was a little bit tired of traveling, also because I didn't see my family and my two boys too often at that time. And so I asked my management if I could do another assignment, preferably in the area of digitalization, especially AI. At that time, I was pretty lucky that my bosses gave me the chance to try something out crazy. And actually, that was also the time, Uli, when we met, and when also AI Lab was founded. And you mentioned before, we used it as the front runners there. And I got to know this great network, the AI network that you set up actually within Siemens, the great minds around AI. And I was immediately fascinated about that.
Wow, Markus, that's quite a journey. And I think you've experienced a lot, and very, very exciting. Another thing that we all experienced this year was the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's still all around. And it actually showed some vulnerabilities in the production strategy and supply chain of companies. And they're actually everywhere. And what are for you the greatest learning to really mitigate those impacts on supply chains in the future, and maybe also build up resilience against future shocks?
Well, first of all, I guess I learned that our Siemens setup in terms of supply chain management and decentral logistics works extremely well. And especially comparingly to other companies, the colleagues were obviously able to master the challenges around undersupply, etc. Secondly, at the same time, we have put even more emphasis, I would say, on risk management for securing the supplies in our factories. And also around that, we are building a companion, so-called Supreme Companion. And is the learning. So it's about risk management and really forecast and foresee certain hiccups in the supply chains.
All right. One can say actually there are two different sides in AI, with our business, I would say, differentiate, right? One is the industrial AI aspect, and the other one is I think, emerging and having, also at the same point, an impact, the enterprise AI, right? Enterprise AI is all about the processes. What is your view on, the AI-driven enterprise? How would you see that? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, industrial AI, I would say, is great. And I guess we have a look to the customers there and the outside perspective there and help them, our customers, to set up a good AI-driven enterprise environment. And at the same time, we are doing that internally. And there's this great initiative also within technology there where we also contribute a lot, where we really try to set up and constantly shape our internal roles and processes with the help of AI capabilities. That's it. And we at SCM focus, of course, mainly on strategic procurement and supply chain domain. But more and more, we realize that the real good use cases are together with our cross-functional partners, such as engineering, quality, sales, finance, logistics, you name it. And with that in mind, we are pursuing somehow to become what we call a full value add orchestrator. It's a long word, but that's the meaning is that we digitalize and apply AI where we can in our domain, but at the same time try to build up a broader cross-functional view and build kind of an AI-driven ecosystem within the company. And that's the idea, at least from my perspective, on AI-driven enterprise.
Right. Marcus, so actually AI is everywhere and there are more and more solutions out there. But what is actually the role of AI or automation and machine learning in supply chain management? Are there any use cases out there that you're very much fascinated about or excited?
Of course, mainly about my companion program, but I guess we touch base on that later. Understood. But I mean, AI plays a role within supply chain management since quite a while. Of course, it started like most companies and domains with I would call it low-hanging fruits, with optimizing and automating rather operational processes with, for example, robotics process automation, NLP-based chatbots, and guided user entries in terms of auto completion suggestions, e.g. for typing correct material classification. So things like that are really helpful and have a focus mainly on efficiency gains. Yeah, and my colleagues in SCM who are in charge of that are really doing a great job there and have built a great expertise and framework and realized quite some clever use cases here. But in addition, with the companion program, we focus less on efficiency gains in operational process, but rather on effectiveness gains in strategic roles. And that's where I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, and actually, whenever obviously we talk about enterprise AI, means you have this internal capabilities and this internal data, and the beauty is that this allows then to merge them with external information, right? And I guess it's also in supply chain, right? Sensing not only the world within their own turf in the corporates, but also on the external turf. And then you have the three pillars, in machine learning, I guess, digitization on steroids, right? You look at processes and you try to digitize and get more efficiency. Then you have the second turf, which is like this automation on steroids, which I was like, can we somehow repetitive task and, can we improve on there? And then you have the statistics on steroids, which is nice things. It can be forecast, predict, and build somehow help us, which you already mentioned it, right? A bit of companions, right? And digital companions, I know, right? It seems to be quite an emphasis in your activities. Can you share maybe a bit of the audience, what are the companions, from your perspective, and how do we interact with them and how are they used? And, can you share a bit of the companion suite actually you have right, at SCM?
Sure. Before I explain this in detail, maybe I take a step back why I did this and why I'm so thrilled about that. As said before, I did quite a while some maturity level assessments all over the Siemens world. And whenever, let's say, we had a result in our evaluations and presented it to the management, and at the end of the assessment, what really makes the difference between, let's say, standard organizations and really world-class organizations is always the decision-making process. So if you really nail it down, if it comes to strategic roles, it's about decision-making. With this in mind and having seen the possibilities with prescriptive analytics, I was really keen and very obsessed on going this path further with the prescriptive analytics there. Yeah, actually, that's what the digital SCM companions are all about. It's about prescriptive use cases who proposes you next best activities. With that, we bring together the strengths of both worlds, the algorithmic objective power, as well as the human subjective intuition, experience, and forward-looking anticipation and knowledge about the future. So really having a companion on your side who proposes you next best activities, but head of the game is always the human being, and he or she can decide whether he takes the proposal or not, and the machine is learning out of that, and that's the feedback loop then that is important for the learning. And
what kind of actions are those then, as decision? Can you share that a bit? What are these actions to be taken that systems then propose?
Some examples I can give you. As said before, we are focusing very much on roles. So we said, okay, in procurement, we have supplier managers, we have procurement managers, we have controllers and so on. And for every role, we think about what are, let's say, their daily decisions to be taken, maybe not daily, maybe weekly, maybe monthly and so on. But there we started, for example, with the role of supplier manager. And for them, we set up a use case and a tool that is proposing you next best activity proposals around which suppliers should be qualified, should be evaluated, should be risk mitigated, and should be developed next. So very strategic proposals. And that is all fueled with the data that we have in our systems already. So nothing that is, let's say, a guts feeling or so. And this is just one example. Another example for the role for the commodity managers, he or she gets next best activity proposals around which alternative suppliers are around that can deliver the same what is already delivered by preferred suppliers, and then really have a challenger supplier around and things like that. So you see, this is how it works. You get proposals on strategic decisions, and you can overrule as a human being and say yes or no. That's the idea. In summary, we call this augmented intelligence in a way that artificial intelligence solutions more and more become complementary sparring partners, which are challenging but also augmenting our human intelligence. So it's like yin and yang, kind of the artificial yin makes our human yang more complete and ultimately enable us as human beings, for example, to take better decisions. Yeah, so currently we have quite a couple of use cases in various stages. So from idea phase to already a handful of companions that are in full scale up phase. Everything was homegrown and only possible with the support of the Innovation Fund. And Uli, also there, I remember that we sat together. It was in the canteen in summer 2017, and I got to know, I guess, from your side that we have this great instrument within Siemens. And I told you about my ideas with prescriptive analytics and companions, and I told you that I need quite a lot of money for that. And you told me about this possibility that we have. And yeah, half year later, I was able to pitch in front of the Siemens Innovation Board together with a great team. And we managed to get the funding for a couple of companions there. And that was, let's say, the birth of a bigger endeavor and bigger program here around. Afterwards, then, with the great collaboration with your fellows within technology, but also with IT resources, we managed to set up this companions. But meanwhile, we also have our own DevOps team who is able to program fancy front ends with the Siemens low-code platform Mendix, for example. It's a very important milestone as well.
What a cool story. Markus, and what kind of use cases or scenarios would you say a supply chain management companion is rather like a guardian to the human?
Well, guardian is maybe the wrong word, but maybe the payment terms companion is a good example in terms of it is guiding and guarding, let's say, the guys when they send out purchase orders up front and give them really proposals on the best payment terms towards the supplier to be taken. So this is not that strategic, but more tactical. But here I would say, okay, guardian is the right wording here. But maybe let me take this question a little bit different, because I think in principle we need a new storytelling or narrative, and therefore I like the title of your podcast really a lot. So you call it Human and AI. So this is what it is. There is humans and AI. Why I'm saying that? Why is this important from my perspective? Because I am experiencing that mostly it is not about human and AI, but more and more human or AI, or human versus AI, or humanized AI, or even artificial humans. And that is really scary. And from my perspective, this is misleading. And let's take, for example, human versus AI. Currently, this is very much predominant, and you all know the storytelling is always about, AI bet the chess master, the Go master, the Jeopardy master, and quite recently, the curling master. Well, a little bit boring from a spectator view, but quite thrilling, I guess, from a technology AI point of view. But it's always, versus. And with some bots that we have around, this story more and more comes to our professional lives. And I have seen even some official contests where, operational processes where machines prove that they can do better and faster than humans. And I personally don't like this. And of course, with that, the workforce also more and more is concerned about their jobs. Or take another wording that I said before, the humanized AI. This trend we clearly see like with Google's duplex, pretending that there is human But the other side, in fact, is machine is doing the conversation. So from a technological perspective, of course, this is fascinating and to some extent maybe a proof that a Turing test has passed. But from a personal and ethical perspective, I have big doubts, and we shouldn't continue this route. I would say at least think there should be kind of a code word or question that a human in the conversation can raise to unmask the machine as a machine. So kind of a code word like Uli, or maybe better, maybe not so common code word like Arbery. And then the machine has to admit that he or it is only a machine, because I really don't think that people like that on the other side they have a conversation with a machine and don't know about that. So that's really scary. And yeah, apart from this humanized AI, I also hope that your title of the podcast will not transform into artificial humans. Also, from my perspective, horrible scenarios in terms of transhuman utopias or better dystopias. So please keep it separated, human and AI. And at least with the companion program, we keep that separate, and we always show that, the humans are ahead of the game here. And just my opinion, my 50 cents on
thanks
this
for
topic.
that. Actually, there's a nice Turing test, I think, in China running. It's called Xiao Eyes. It's rolled out by Microsoft. It's a bot, like a chat, social media bot, and been highly used, millions and millions and billions in conversations about it. And the main thing is people know that it is actually an artificial system, right? So it's a software system, does that, but they still love it because they trigger some kind of sensitives, like that the bots ask you, in the morning, how are you? Oh, I hope so good. Here's a small puppy image, right? Do you love it, right? Even though we are fully aware of that these systems, are not, there is no human behind it, but still sometimes I guess human is very easy to exploit, isn't it? But on a different note, to be honest, is I think what you already said, we are living in a world of increasing complexity. And with this increasing complexity, sometimes technology can help and assist us, identifying answers or shipping us a bit more further to disentangle basically this craziness. And sometimes you refer to yourself as an analytics translator, which is actually a pretty nice notion, I think, because, we somehow obviously geeky, we always say here it is the expert pool and enthusiast pool, but actually, it's actually business translator or analytics translator. And I think there is a strong need for exactly that. What is for you an analytics translator, and why is that actually pretty much important?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. My favorite question, I would say. And actually, there's a pretty funny story behind it. It was pretty much 1 year ago when I was giving a speech at the Gartner Analytics conference. And there I explained in my own words what I was doing the last 2 to 3 years in the companion program, somehow mainly being the translator between some groups of, I said aliens, meaning that the guys from SCM business and their jargon and the data scientists on the other side also spoke their own language. And for the other group, it always looked like the other group is talking Klingonian language or something like that. And of course, me coming from the domain of procurement and supply chain management, I understood the business side, but also with my background in IT and digitalization before, I could translate towards the data scientist and to the IT guys as well, and the other way back as well. And therefore, I found myself really like a translator, at least at the beginning. Now, it is easy also for some of the data scientists because they really understand our domain quite well. Yeah, at the end of my speech, a Dutch guy stepped up the podium and came to me and asked me if I know what the correct term of my role is. And I said, well, I don't know. Tell me, maybe master of disaster, something like that. And he answered, no, there is this concept and the role description of this analytics translator. And yeah, we exchanged business cards, and he sent me later on the white paper about that role. And well, I read it, and it perfectly described my role at that time. 100%, and not only my role, but also some other roles in procurement. So really kind of out of a domain get a decent understanding, not in-depth understanding, but a decent understanding on what is possible with data, on what is possible with data scientists and also with the IT guys, and really having the overall big picture on the use case and driving this forward together with a very diverse team there. And that's what I like with this role. And since that, I promote this role also within the Siemens network.
You just mentioned data, and data obviously plays a vital role in the supply chain management and, of course, your role. But I guess you have also super blended and mixed data structures or interaction, transactions, legacy, and so much more. But how do you actually approach the data strategy in your organization? So what is actually needed?
Yeah, very good question, and one of the key learnings also. And indeed, data is of utmost importance, of course, for a high quality of decision proposal, especially in the companion areas, of course. Well, we realized, more or less that not all data, especially cross-functional data, is available for our use cases that we had in mind. And secondly, also the quality of the data is not on the stage that is needed. And therefore, we came to the conclusion that before the companion use cases or even other data analytics use cases, we need to get back one step and really focus on data availability and data quality. And therefore, we had pitched this summer again in front of the Siemens Innovation Fund, and we're lucky to get another thumbs up and get a funding for our program Data Axxelerator, which we started just this October. And yeah, main goals are, I would say, not on the first glance, not that sexy than the companion story. But on the other side, it's kind of a prerequisite for the companions and other data analytics endeavors that we have within supply chain and procurement. And it's really about, data integration with the help, for example, of knowledge graph technology, and really boosting the data quality at source, and deduplicate and things like that. And based on that, we can get even better decision-making process afterwards. And yeah, with that, we are one puzzle within Siemens to create what we call a new data policy, I would say, meaning we need new roles like data stewards or better accessibility to data, while at the same time complying to the cybersecurity requirements. So this is quite complex program, you can imagine.
But I guess that fits also to your somehow, pushing a community called data to value, right? Also somehow, I guess it needs, data literacy and, having a data strategy. I think if you want to trigger something in a corporation, you need to start a movement. Is that a movement? What is the data to value community all about?
Movement sounds great. Maybe it is a movement already. I mean, actually, we also established this cross-divisional and cross-functional community already some 3 years ago. And when I think back, we started very small with, I would say, more or less 10 colleagues with the same mindset in place. And meanwhile, we are more than 30 colleagues around, not only within supply chain, but as said, cross-functional and guys from IT, technology, logistics, quality, and engineering. And what we are doing there is, at least before Corona, we met on a bi-monthly basis and discussed quite literally. So we discussed data to value. So we tried to find value out of the data. So discuss the data topics, availability, integration, and the security topics, but then also how we can create value with clever use cases and maybe bundle also our resources. Therefore, and that's what we discussed there on a face-to-face bi-monthly basis on a full day basis. And with Corona now, we switched to a more virtual format with shorter focus topics, and with all, let's say, having the opportunity to learn, contribute, and then also jointly progress on our journey there. And from that perspective, it could be kind of a movement, yeah.
Right. Markus, we came across the working mode, cognitive, diverse, T-shaped teams. But what is it all about? Can you maybe shortly elaborate on it?
It is pretty much related, of course, to the role of analytics translator. I explained it before that you have, let's say, quite some different team members than usually in your team by default. But if you think it through, you should really foster this and really have teams and team members with different opinions from different domains. And from my experience over the last 3 or 4 years almost now in the companion area, it is the ingredient for innovation. So if you only take homogeneous thinkers in your team, you won't have any innovation there. And yeah, to some extent quite strenuous for the one who manages the team, at least at the beginning, of course, it is quite strenuous. But in the long and midterm run, a diverse team is of utmost importance for innovation. From a leadership perspective, it's really about, let's say, fostering this culture and really recruit also different personalities. There's this saying, great minds think alike. I think this is totally different. So really great minds don't think alike, they totally think different. And if you bring these great minds together, these are the ingredients for real great innovation, I would say.
I strongly agree. And what a nice quote. But we are already at the very end of this session. Time was really flying. But before we call it a day, we want to play authentic autocomplete with you. That's our ending game. So let me give you for the closing a couple of sentence starters and you just finish. So Siemens is
still one of the most innovative companies in the B2B area.
Amazing. Supply chain of tomorrow will be
resilient and greener, or even more sustainable.
I like that. Innovation is
exciting and for Siemens essential to succeed also for the next 170 years, I would say.
Love that. The corona pandemic has taught me
to be more patient, mindful, and also humble.
Beautiful. And last but not least, my personal superpower is?
Well, professionally, to continue working within great minds in this great company, of course, and privately to plan some nice trips with my family and spend more time in our nature, allowing myself more and more the luxury of being offline, just be a non-digital human without any AI.
Digital detox. Here we go. More than ever, right? Markus, thanks so much, for being here, being with us. And I enjoyed, the last years already. Super, a different engagement and aspect that we have. And I hope really we continue that journey, sometimes bits and pieces together. But thanks for, sharing a bit of your thoughts to us and to the outsider folks. And folks out there, stay tuned. There's so much to come. Stay bold, committed, and open-minded, and we hear us definitely at the next Siemens AI podcast. Thanks.